What's going on, guys? It's Brandon back here for another playoff series. Today we got 2010 round 2, once again against 2009, against the Vancouver Canucks. This time, however, the Hawks were the higher seed, as the Hawks were the number 2 seed with 112 points. The Canucks were the 3rd seed with 103 points. The Hawks beat the Nashville in 6 to get here. Vancouver beat the Kings in 6 to get here. So, I got a rematch of the previous year's playoffs, and it went more so the exact same way the first time around. Game 1, the Hawks came out, they played horrible. Christian Ehrhoff makes it 1-0, Mason Raymond makes it 2-0, both getting their second of the playoffs. Henrik Sedin makes it 3-0 in the second period with his second of the playoffs. Kyle Wellwood makes it 4-0 with his first of the playoffs on a power play. And Michael Grabner, I completely forgot was with the Canucks at the time, who scored his first of the playoffs, made it 5-0. Then in the third period, Patrick Kane scores in the power play and make it 5-1. His 5th of the playoffs. Horrible game 1. I actually forgot to write down the scores up here, so I'll quickly do that. Loss 5-1. And we'll write them down as we go along. Next up, we got game 2, in which Mason Raymond early makes it 1-0 and his 3rd of the playoffs, and Mikael Samuelsson, the menace from Detroit the previous year, gets his 8th of the playoffs. He was having a phenomenal playoffs apparently against the Kings. If he scored 7 goals in the first round, and he makes it 2-0. So the Hawks are down 2-0 early, and then they make the comeback, starting with Brent Seabrook late in the first, who makes it 2-1 with his first of the playoffs. No scoring in the second, and the Hawks in the third, they battle back. Sharp scores shorthanded with his 4th of the playoffs to tie it. Versteeg then scores with his first of the playoffs, and Kane then scores with his 6th of the playoffs, which was an empty netter. And the Hawks win game 2, 4-2. Game 3 in Vancouver, after splitting the series at home, Chris Versteeg makes it 1-0 early to get his 2nd of the playoffs. But this is the Dustin Byfuglien is a superhuman party, as Byfuglien makes it 2-0 on the power play with his first of the year. Essentially, Byfuglien got moved from defense to forward, and then it became an absolute menace to literally every goaltender, every defender, every player that was on the opposite team. If Byfuglien stayed, who knows how much better this team would have been if the salary cap wasn't so screwed up by the management following the 2009 season. Then Jannik Hansen makes it 2-1 with his first of the playoffs, and then Dustin Byfuglien responds with his 2nd of the playoffs on the power play again to make it 3-1. And then Alex Burrows makes it 3-2 with his 2nd of the playoffs. Marian Hossa gets his 2nd of the playoffs in the 3rd while making it 4-2. And then Byfuglien gets the hat trick and 3rd of the playoffs and makes it 5-2. So great game for Byfuglien. Game 4. This is a game that I remember. I remember game 3 too. I remember game 1, I remember game 3, I remember game 4, and I remember game 6. Those are the 4 of these games of the series that I remember pretty well. And game 4, we started off with Brent Seabrook scoring 18 seconds into the game with his 2nd of the playoffs to make it 1-0. Kyle Wellwood then responds. I had so many Kyle Wellwood hockey cards. I have hundreds of hockey cards under my desk. I have 5 or 6 Kyle Wellwoods. I don't know why I do, but I just do. And they're all with Vancouver. And so he gets his 2nd of the playoffs. And then, that was a minute and 16 after Seabrook's goal. Then Jonathan Toews scores his 3rd of the playoffs on the power play, and then Daniel Sedin responds with... forgot to write this down. Sorry about that. Daniel Sedin scores his 5th of the playoffs on the power play to make it 2-2. If you can see right here, look how many power play goals were scored right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in a row. 6 power play goals in a row. Which is hilarious to me. Go to the second period. Jonathan Toews gets his 4th of the playoffs on the power play. I was 27 seconds into the period. Patrick Sharp then scores on the power play to make it 4-2 with his 5th of the playoffs. Then Toews gets a hat trick, so hat tricks in back-to-back games. First Byfuglien, then Toews. Toews gets his 5th of the playoffs on the power play. And then Alex Edler makes it 5-3 with his 2nd of the year, 2nd of the playoffs on the power play. And Thomas Kopecky gets his 3rd of the playoffs to make it 6-3 in the 3rd. Henrik Sedin gets his 3rd of the playoffs to make it 6-4, and Bolin scores the empty netter to make it 7-4. The Hawks have a 3-1 series lead going home, and they win 7-4. So this is the story of the series. The story of the series was you didn't need a goalie, you just need to outscore your team. 5-1 Vancouver, 4-2 Chicago, 5-2 Chicago, 7-4 Chicago. Game 5, they lose at home, 4-1. Christian Ehrhoff makes it 1-0 early, gets his third of the playoffs. One of the only players I liked on that team that came after 2009. Bieksa, hated Bieksa, made it 2-0 with his second of the playoffs, and then in the second period he gets a second of the game with his third of the playoffs on the power play. We go to the third period, Taves scores his sixth of the playoffs, make it 3-1, but Burrows gets the empty netter. Canucks win 4-1, and we go back to Vancouver. In Game 6, where the Hawks put it away soundly. No scoring in the first period, but Troy Brouwer gets his first of the playoffs. Then Chris Versteeg gets his third of the playoffs. And then Dave Bolin gets his third of the playoffs. The first two goals were 36 seconds apart. Bolin, like Brouwer's was 2 minutes into the game, his was literally 2 minutes 36 seconds, so I found that really convenient because I didn't have to do math. Bolin, third of the playoffs, shorthanded, one of the best penalty killers I've ever seen in my entire life. Shane O'Brien then makes it 3-1 with his first of the playoffs, and then Kane gets his seventh, and Byfuglien gets his fourth at 25 seconds apart as the Hawks win 5-1. Take the series in 6, just like the previous year, and me seeing the only difference being Chicago started with home ice advantage, and also like the Hawks weren't down 2-1, they were up 2-1 instead. But yeah, so we move on to the stats. In the series, Taves leads the Hawks in points with 4 goals, 8 assists, 12 points in 6 games, 2 points per game player in this series. Apologize, I had to sneeze. Kane then gets second with 3 goals, 5 assists, 8 points. Sharp has 2 goals, 5 assists for 7 points. Byfuglien has 4 goals, 2 assists for 6 points, and then Niemi goes 4-2 with an .898 save percentage. Then Huey goes in for a few shots as he saves 3 out of 3 and has a 100% save percentage as the only appearance Huey makes in the playoffs. And he talked about someone that was paid. He was on like a 4-year, $22.5 million deal, while Niemi was on this like entry level contract. It was incredible. Sedin then Henrik Sedin leads the Canucks in points with 2 goals, 4 assists, 6 points. And then Bieksa and Burrows each have 2 goals, 3 assists for 5 points. Luongo goes 2-4 with an .897 save percentage, and Luongo was blamed very much so for this series, even though the Hawks just rather dominated on the score sheet. If you see here, 4-2, 5-4, no 5-2, 7-4, 5-1. Any game they won, Luongo gave up 4 goals or more, and any game that they lost, Luongo only gave up 1. So whose fault was it really? Was it Luongo's, where they were just... If you watch highlights from the series, the Hawks are just teeing up shots right in the slot. Canucks are taking... Look how many... They scored 4 power play goals in this game. How do you blame Luongo on that? Luongo's not taking the penalties. You have a bunch of stupid players on the Canucks team that are taking the penalties. And the hockey guy knows it. The hockey guy did a review of the 2011 roster when they on the finalist series. He just looked at the teams in general. And they just... to no discipline whatsoever, and that's why they didn't win. 2011, when we get to there, we'll see how close the Canucks were to losing to Chicago in that series, even though they were the President's Trophy winning first seed, and the Hawks were the hangover Hawks, the 8th seed that year. But we'll get to that next. No, we'll get to that. Wait, not tomorrow. Still got to the rest of these playoffs. We got round 3, round 4, and so in 3 days we'll get to that. I believe that's Christmas Day, we'll get to that. So that'll be a great Christmas present to share with you all. And yeah, that's all I have for you guys today. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.